It's like you're a bank that wants to protect thousands of safes in a continuous fashion, but the safes are distributed across the globe. You need to know where are the safes, what's inside, who is accessing the safes, and where the money goes, right?
Welcome to Securing the Future podcast with your hosts Jesse Metters and Ramin Lameh, where we discuss the latest cutting-edge technologies and how they are affecting the security industry. This is the show where industry expertise meets in-depth discussions.
We're back. Welcome, everyone, to Securing the Future podcast. I am your host, Jesse Metters, and with me, as usual, is my trusty co-host, Ramin Lameh.
What's up, everyone?
So we are back with a real exciting episode today. We're going to talk about the fastest growing area of cybersecurity products, which is really the area of data security, posture management, and compliance. And on our show today, we've got Guy Shani, who is the CEO and co-founder of Polar Security, a company out of Israel that was acquired in 2023, I believe it was, or 2021, by IBM. He's got a really cool story, and we're really excited to have you, Guy. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, guys, and good morning.
Absolutely. So, Guy, we'd love to hear your story. When we do bring founders onto the show, obviously the starting point is just really hearing the story, because it's always so exciting to hear a company that had success so early, so quickly too. And I'm excited for you to talk about this space. Obviously, there's so much talk around data security and the complexity of cloud infrastructure and SaaS applications and where all of your data is stored, and especially in high consequence environments. Let's start off with a little bit of your background and what made you decide to tackle this problem space, a little bit about how the company formed and was acquired, and then we'll dive into kind of some of the trends you're seeing in the area of data security and securing that in cloud, especially with, of course, the additional complexity that's happening with generative AI adoption, and where is all that data going? And we'll let you start off with your story.
Sounds good. And actually, that's an interesting one because at the beginning, we were focused on another direction. So I'll give you the full story because I think it's an interesting one. Roy, my friend, co-founder and CTO, we both spent most of our career, like about 12 to 15-ish years at the Israeli Prime Minister's office and Unit A200, which is similar to the NSA. Now,
Wow.
We ran and were exposed to national state cyber attacks, sophisticated attacks. And I also led the move to the vulnerability side. I led the vulnerability research in the organization and so on. So I was in deep tech. So the initial focus we had was, hey, we have companies, they have data stores, sensitive data in their databases, shared storages, and so on. Let's protect them against sophisticated cyber attacks. So that was the initial focus. Then we decided to leave our jobs. So we left the jobs, we moved to the two guys in the garage mode. We bought and everything was before we even started Polar, the company, before we raised money, just two engineers in a garage that want to start their own baby. So we bought the LinkedIn's premium, and we started reaching out to CISOs and practitioners, to many different companies. Day and night, I think slept like 4 hours a day. That's all. And the rest, we just drank booze, alcohol, and reached out to CISOs. Now,
Only in Israel can you do that.
Exactly. Also, the time difference. So we had to stay awake at night. And so people are kind, and they hopped on to a call with us to just give feedback about the space, about protecting sensitive data, give feedback about the challenges around it and what they are facing, and whether it's one of their top three pains, and also about our idea on how to solve it. I think we managed to speak with like 44-ish CISOs. By the way, also Fortune 500 companies. Again, people are kind, they just hopped on to help. And the more conversations we had, we found out that sophisticated attacks for the data stores, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We understood that companies, they even don't know what to protect. They don't know where the sensitive data is, where it goes, who is accessing the sensitive data. And moreover, with the expansion and the move to the cloud, SaaS solutions, and the data warehouses, they are losing the control for the sensitive data. And analogy that I always say, it's like you're a bank that wants to protect thousands of safes in a continuous fashion, but the safes are distributed across the globe. You need to know where are the safes, what's inside, who is accessing the safes, and where the money goes, right? So we understood that today they're mapping where the sensitive data is located. What sensitive data do they have in the company? Let's say you're a financial institute. You have credit cards sprawled in your on-prem side. You want to understand and make sure you don't have credit cards sprawled also in your SaaS or cloud, AWS, GCP, Azure, Salesforce, Snowflake, and so on. So you need something to continuously monitor and give you a complete visibility of what sensitive data you have, where it is, who is accessing the data, where the data goes, all the data flows, where the data is flowing, and then make sure that the sensitive data is well protected and also it follows regulations. Because GDPR, you need to make sure that sensitive data is not leaving Europe, right? But what if you have a server in India that communicates with some database in Germany? You need to be aware of these data flows happening. Yep. So that's what we saw. That today, the way to get this visibility is completely manual. The security goes and interviews R&D when a new feature is being created to better understand what sensitive data is involved, who is accessing, where it's stored, and so on. We saw that the initial problem we thought of, hey, there is a super sophisticated attack, a national state attack that could be on this kind of database in the cloud or this data warehouse. That's, again, just the tip of the iceberg. And once we understood it, we started to build layers. The first layer is visibility of what sensitive data you have across the ecosystem, across multiple clouds, because all companies are multi-cloud, across SaaS solutions, across data warehouses. So first, let's see where the data is located. Second, let's automatically classify the data, because you need to know if you have PIIs, PHI, PCI data inside, dev secrets, and proprietary type of data you have, and so on. Then let's map the data flows, who is accessing what, where the data is going, and then let's protect it. Let's make sure that you won't be the next data breach. A few examples, by the way, top of my head. I don't know if you recall the data breach happened, the past year, I think, to Disney. Disney, for instance, their Slack got breached.
Oh yeah, the Slack one. Yeah, of course.
Exactly. Another one, by the way, that was in Slack. Imagine you have in Slack lots of channels with sensitive data stored there. Another one, Optus. Optus, the largest telecommunication company in Australia. They had a breach about 2-ish years ago. Third of Australia's populations, all of their PIIs got leaked. Verizon had something similar in AWS. Again, last year, 3 million PIIs got leaked. Verizon, it was in AWS. Optus, if I recall correctly, it was in another cloud. The Disney one was in Slack. You had also the one that was in Snowflake, I think last year also, that a lot of people talked on. So what I'm trying to say is that data is everywhere, and you need to make sure it's well protected. So once we understood it, we went to raise money. Again, we didn't have any code that we wrote already, and it was like the idea, the problem statement, the way to solve it in a continuous fashion, and a presentation. So we went to raise money. We also were connected with a bunch of great executives, cyber executives, mostly in the States, that helped us along the road, that also invested in us. And then we basically raised money and built a great product, recruited the best talent in Israel, the best in the city and in Tel Aviv.
Wow. What an exciting story. That's awesome. Just the gumption to quit your jobs and go start this without any plan of like, how are we going to survive? How are we going to make money off of it? We haven't even have a product built. Like that takes some real courage from both you and your co-founder. So, wow, just another great story of someone who just took that risk to jump into a problem space that they knew needed to have major attention to it. And then you actually built it, got the investors, right? Just put all the time and work into getting the right information from the right people. Yeah. Ramin, any questions you had from that or any comments as well?
No, just to add to it, right? I think the complexity of what you've done, it's been uphill. Because anytime I think of data security, it's one challenge on-prem, it's a whole different challenge on the cloud. And the education piece around it is where I imagine you spend the most amount of your time, right? Educating your potential customers on why there's risk there and getting them to understand those risks, to understand the controls, the mechanisms are out there, and then being able to sell your products. There was a company that I also helped advise a couple of years ago that is also sold up recently as well in the same exact space. And they have a very similar story to yours in terms of just the getting the word out and helping educate some of these legacy companies that, hey, you are in the cloud, whether you understand it or not, and you need to have controls in place to meet your regulations, right? So it's more of like the adoption, I'm sure, is the biggest challenge versus how capable is your technology. Does that make sense? Does that agree to your journey?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. But another thing that helped to drive awareness to the whole space was actually, and also surprisingly, competition. So people think of competition as something bad, but competition is actually something good, because then you and your competitors, you share the same goal of educating the market. I can tell you that we saw a lot of startups getting into this space. And again, as I think I said it, but over the 3 years since inception of the space, about $1 billion, actually $2 billion of investments flew to this space. Now, I have a question to you guys. How does a language become a language?
Adoption?
When you have enough people that speak and use that language. And by having the competition, we all talk the same language, which basically educated the market. And then once the market got educated, the market started to talk with Gartner and other analysts. And therefore, it took about 7 months to Gartner to decide, hey, there is a real and big thing here. We need to open a new box. And then they opened the DSPM box. You can see it in their hype cycle. And it took them just 7 months to do it. And frankly, I think that's the fastest one in all times of Gartner in the cybersecurity space.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's always interesting too, because anytime there's a new category, you have an uphill battle because you're not competing with something legacy, right? You're trying to carve out new budget for people and companies. And the challenge for the CISOs on the other end that you're trying to sell to is they have to now educate their leaders on why they need additional spend too, right? It's not a replacement product. This is an additional product anytime you have a new category, right? So it's definitely in the right direction. That's another challenge that you've had to deal with in your journey, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the challenge and the distinction between opening a new box versus disrupting an existing one. Budget is one of the challenges. Awareness is the second one. With the awareness, actually, it was easier because people came to us with the problem. They came to us and they told us, listen, guys, we have a data transformation or a cloud adoption project. that we are moving lots of stuff, workloads to the cloud, and the data is involved. How can we make sure that the R&D that moves the workloads with the data are not erroring, are not doing some inherent compliance violations? So that's actually the problem. It was pretty known, and they knew it, but budget and dealing with the budget stuff and some other bureaucracy stuff was more challenging in this space.
What have you found to be successful for helping partner with the CISOs and your customers for them to help educate their leadership? What have you found to be the most successful use cases on that side?
I think the best way to educate them was, hey, go and use it. So that's why we built the product from ground up to be self-sold. Companies, they could, and the leaders and also the practitioners, they could go and onboard by themselves without our help. No heavy lifting, no heavy deployments to be made. Everything, all the sensitive data was found automatically. And then once they saw the data they didn't know exist, like the legacy data stores, orphan databases, and so on, some sensitive data they didn't know exist in specific other locations and regions, then there was like the oh shit moment. And it helped them to convince the leadership, hey, there is a big challenge here. We need something that in a continuous fashion will map the data and make sure it's protected.
So using data, and I love that, right? Because that's been the challenge, is to get that proof of concept, that adoption, one, to be quicker and then less resource intensive, right? I remember once deploying RSA DLP. If anyone remembers that product from, 20 years ago, and it took a year to roll out that product across an enterprise. And it was still not a very good, effective product, right? It was like, is this false positive? I don't know. We need to manually go through this data. And products like that, they don't sell themselves, right? Because you don't have a very clear picture. It takes a long time. And then by the end, you're like, am I even getting my investment ROI out of this? Or is this just completely, I'm wasting operational resources doing that?
That's an interesting one because it leads to another challenge. So visibility is nice, but visibility is not enough. Because today I have plenty of security solutions that every one of them brings you some sort of visibility. And then the question is, okay, what's next? What the hell am I going to do with this visibility? So that's why not only we brought the visibility was the first step, obviously, but then the ability to focus on the critical vulnerabilities we find because they are more close to specific sensitive data that interest you. Because there is a company that is mostly interested in PCI data. They do have, let's assume they do have PIIs sprawled there, but that's less relevant. Okay, if we have some data breach and PIIs will get leaked, okay, but not PCI. PCI should be completely safe. So the ability to focus on specific types of data, that's first. Second, the ability to focus on the high volume of data. I don't care if 2 credit cards will find themselves to the darknet, but if it's about 100,000 or something, then I should make sure that it's protected. Third, having not only finding the vulnerabilities and compliance violations, but providing scripts and guidelines on how to solve them automatically and integrating into the existing platforms they have, opening tickets and SIEM/SOAR and so on. So when you are combining the focus, the high volume, prioritization, and connecting scripts to mitigate and connecting to the existing environments to mitigate, then visibility becomes more proactive and then
actionable, right?
You're actionable, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, right? Because I remember whether it was like a packet capturing type of technology, whether it's a firewall, whether it's a DLP, these technologies can be very noisy. So it's very important to be able to have a good baseline and then look for kind of like the anomalies, right? And be able to quickly detect those, right? Because I imagine the scenario where if someone is coming after your sensitive data, they're not coming to steal your sensitive data one at a time, right? They're going to come and look to export as much as they can, as quickly as they can. And that's where the closer you are to real-time visibility and then into actions, the more you're set up for success to be able to stop that situation. Versus where if you don't have a good visibility, you don't have good baseline, your tools are too slow for real-time kind of capability, and then you're more tied to manual actions, right? You're less likely to be able to catch those and then even to be able to identify them. I definitely see that direction going. And I'd love to even hear, I know we interrupted your story in terms of where your story started and where it is now. And then just to hear where it's going as well. Where does IBM see the shift from where you guys saw it? Where is your focus today versus 2 years ago? I think that would be great to hear as well, because it paints the picture of where the trend is going, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't recall where I start in the story, but we raised the money, we built a great product, we won lots of clients, including Fortune 50 clients. And then we joined forces with the great team in IBM. IBM, they are disruptive in the ecosystem. They are doing great on-prem side of the data security. Okay, so they have, I think, the best products in the space, and they got a lot of attention and from clients with regards to sensitive data moving to the cloud. They got a lot of requests from clients. Hey, data is no longer in a basement. Data is sprawled also out there in the cloud, SaaS, and warehouses. We need to protect, you need IBM to protect our data there. So it was like a natural that this extension to cloud, SaaS, and warehouses, and therefore we joined forces with IBM. So now I'm leading cloud data security in IBM, as well as the AI security product we have. I'm happy to talk about this one because that's also a natural space extension to the data security space.
Yeah, I'm having sometimes as I'm talking with new clients that are doing something new, using AI or leveraging it or trying to protect against it, like for the employees internally, or using it as a tool to augment something and create more efficiency. So how are you seeing the challenges of, let's say you want to implement some type of LLM inside of an organization and now there's data going in there and you don't want the sensitive data going into something that's public, or you decide, hey, we're going to create our own LLM internally and build it and leverage a private instance of OpenAI as an example. I don't know. There's so many different ways to do this and things that continue to innovate every day, it feels like. What are you seeing with regards to the product you offer and how does it attack this problem surface?
So let's try to see it from the eyes of the customer. Okay.
Sure.
So what type of customers are utilizing LLMs? You have the takers, shapers, and makers. Takers, these are the guys utilizing ChatGPT, Llama, and so on. Okay, they're basically the employees are going into ChatGPT, searching stuff, and so on. There, the challenge is straightforward. You don't want sensitive data to be leaked to there. You don't want an employee to copy paste some internal files into ChatGPT. That's trivial.
And real quick to pause you there, that's honestly no different than in the past with like cloud storages like Box.com and others.
Exactly.
Like that problem is not that different than it used to be. Go on.
Exactly. If you're asking me, there are a bunch of different types of solutions existing ones that will solve this challenge. DLP side of the world, browser security, and so on. So that's the takers. Then you have the shapers. Shapers are the ones that are going to use existing foundational models and train them or tweak them with their corporate data to get some benefits. For instance, you want to handle sales, a chatbot for support, and so on. So you're utilizing existing models, feeding it with your sensitive data, and creating some value to the business. And then you have the makers. Makers are the ones creating their own models, like in the autonomous car industry. I think the main or the biggest problem is with the shapers. Because the shapers, again, they are feeding the models with existing data. That's the focus. Now, they need, again, visibility. Visibility of what are the models being used in the company. Are they through Azure OpenAI? Are they directly with OpenAI or other companies? Whether an employee just downloaded an open source model, trained it, and then attached it to the application. So first, let's get a complete visibility of all the models. Let's understand what data is going into the models. Then let's understand how the model is being utilized. You can imagine the models like hubs, like switch in the network. It's an interface to your data stores, and you want to better understand what data goes there and who is utilizing it and for what reasons, and whether this someone gets an access and exposure to sensitive data it shouldn't be able to access through the model, obviously. So that's what we are doing. We are providing a complete visibility of the models, the data involved, the usage, and then we protect the data and the AI data pipelines from breaches, bad access, and so on.
It almost sounds like a firewall. Is that kind of how you
That's a good terminology. I hear a lot of clients call it AI firewall. But it's not just a firewall, because a firewall is just, that's a component, right? You need visibility, you need to map the data and understand whether sensitive data is involved. That's here the connection.
It's more like next gen firewall.
Yes. Yes, because it has to be features. It's like the next gen terminology, but yeah.
But it has to be intelligent, right? Because there's some use cases or flows that are okay. There are some that are not okay, right? So it has to probably towards real time make those kind of judgments, give you visibilities, and then decide on actions, right? So that's the challenge of what you're trying to solve.
Yeah, and you have also variety types of vulnerabilities, new vulnerabilities that you didn't have in the past. All the injections and the prompt injections and model evasive and poisoning and bunch of other types of vulnerabilities. You did.
I learned a new one this week with DeepSeek, right? And looking at what potential vulnerability could have been used on OpenAI for them to potentially use not just their data, but like their LLMs, right? And being able to iterate on them. So that's a whole nother type of attack that goes beyond what a application security person is used to.
Yeah, completely agree. That's why companies are super afraid from utilizing models. But I think that all companies should use models, because that's technology. Creates a lot of efficiency and you must embrace it. But you need security for it.
One thing that I think is really important to highlight here, and I come from like a financial industry where I would say they were not the quickest adopters with new technology. Companies need to be aware that whether they adopt these things or they adopt AI or controls, they're going to happen. They need to lean, in my opinion, they need to lean in with a more proactive model with controls, with guardrails, and allow their developer teams and their infrastructure teams or DevOps teams to figure out the right balance, right? That you can't just have an organization in 2025 say, we're not going to use AI, right? That's just impossible. You cannot control every screen. And when they create that as well, they create a bad behavior, right? I remember this with website filtering back in the day, right? When you block certain websites, people found ways to still go to their websites, right? You weren't able to 100% block them at home, at Starbucks, on their phones, personal devices. So this is where I like products like yours, because being an early adopter with those kind of controls, it helps set up guardrails. Then you have visibility. Then you can influence hygiene. When people are doing things that they're not supposed to, you can use more guidance versus like this carrot and stick approach, right? Versus going with the stick, you can leverage the carrot and build more secure hygiene into what they're trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's the same. We're all parents now. I know Guy has got another one on the way. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
It's the same way we think about parenting, right? There's
More nights with no sleeping, but yeah.
I remember those days. But
You know, that you're speaking of. Sorry, question.
sorry. No, I was going to say, as a parent, you have a couple different options, right? Do you get ahead of what you know your child's going to eventually learn about, those uncomfortable conversations as a parent, as your child gets a little bit older? Do you get ahead of those and start talking about them and putting in proper guardrails? Or do you just say, no, I'm never going to talk about this. We're never going to allow this. And then eventually the kid's going to figure out a way to do it. So you have to find that balance. It's a similar behavior of any human. We have to think about the psychology behind how users act. And you seem like you have such a great blend of that understanding, Guy, and you're able to simplify it. I can tell this is part of why you've done so well, is your ability to simplify things and put them into categories so that our brain can comprehend them in a simple way, and then take something that's really complex and simplify it and make a solution to it. It's a very valuable skill, and it's also a great way for the users who are listening today to really understand this space. And the way you just broke down the challenges in generative AI, I thought was brilliant.
Thank you.
So
I think it's a matter of when you have a daughter and you need to explain everything you do and why and how, because otherwise she wouldn't agree to do something. Then you need to simplify stuff.
It's funny, we use logic in our parenting versus the past where it was just do it because I said so.
yeah,
Exactly. That's
Now that Jesse's gone,
that's what I thought. Then I found out that that's a completely different story.
yeah, especially with a daughter, I can imagine. I have 2 boys. Now, Jesse, that you went this direction, we got to see who's got the best dad joke.
oh man, on the spot, I don't know. I don't have great ones. All right, go for it. Finish.
Go for it.
Why don't eggs tell jokes?
I don't
Because
know.
they might crack up.
Crack out. I knew it was gonna be something cracking. I was trying to think off the top. I was like, I think that's a great place for us to stop. Guy, this was really informative, and congratulations on just the success that you had. Just what a story, right? Coming from Israel, now you're in the US in Boston, freezing your butt off, but enjoying the American life. And what a success story, working with IBM and selling a company to IBM. What a great story of perseverance, dedication to solving the problem, and then the impact that you're making. Really, it sounds like you guys are really trailblazers to create this new space that's like the fastest growing area of cybersecurity. And you maintain such a humble attitude about it. So really enjoyed having you on our show, and just like what we learned today. I think this is very helpful for a lot of the leaders out there that we know in our network that are IT leaders, engineering leaders, CISOs. Definitely embrace the changes, embrace technology, but do it securely as we continue to try to secure the future together. So thanks so much, Guy, for your time. We really appreciated it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll see everyone next time.